Hey, come on in and spend some time with the film hobbyist. My name is Lydia, and I love movies. We're sitting here in my attic room. It's quite warm. There isn't much insulation, so on a late July day, this space can bake. There's a box fan to the side, and the navy blue curtains are closed. But don't worry, we're not in the dark. These curtains have little holes punched into them, the shapes of stars and moons. They're cast over the floor, our bodies and our faces, little shining freckles of light. I love movies. That's what I've talked about with you during our visits together so far. But I also appreciate the kind of long-form cinematic storytelling you often find in television. Most of the time, I want to talk to you about movies specifically. But now seems like a really relevant time to talk to you about some prestige TV, specifically the Disney Plus streaming show Andor. Andor is a difficult thing to explain. It's a Star Wars show, a prequel series to a prequel spin-off of a nearly 50-year-old movie. And if that makes you want to groan and bury your head in your hands, I understand. This is a bizarre thing. But it's also some pretty amazing art that gave me a lot to think about. And now, just a few months after its series finale, before it picks up at least a couple of Emmys, seems like just the right time to share my thoughts with you. I love Star Wars. It's a franchise that has had specific, tangible influence on me as a person and on my imagination as a writer. Someday we'll talk about the films, specifically The Empire Strikes Back. But this is where I have to reveal that my first Star Wars wasn't the original trilogy. It was what was then called the Expanded Universe, the collection of novels by various authors that vaguely connected to each other, both continuing the story of the original characters and adding new ones that redefined what Star Wars could be. Is Star Wars a metaphysical pondering on the nature of consciousness? Or is it a collection of aliens and space weirdos pulling off heists to screw over authoritarian supply systems? Is it thrilling stories for kids about space wizard school? Or is it an adult melodrama about moral ambiguity? All of these were Star Wars to me. But that's definitely not the case for everyone, and is, again, what makes Andor a very weird thing. So before I can tell you why I haven't been able to stop gushing about Andor for literal months to anyone who would listen, I have to help you understand what it even is. In 1977, director George Lucas released a movie called Star Wars, what we now call Episode 4 or A New Hope. I know you've seen this movie. Even if you haven't seen this movie, you've seen this movie. Its impact on pop culture is immeasurable in storytelling style, in iconography, in music, in film language, and special effects. It changed movies and storytelling forever. And here's what makes it special. Star Wars is epic, mythic fantasy. It's about a hero rising from nowhere to take on evil. It's about space wizards fighting each other with magic weapons. It's about the conflict between pragmatism and spirituality. This is timeless, archetypal stuff. But what makes it unique is that it tells these stories not with magic and whimsy and a dash of fairy, but in space with computers and robots and starships. This is a world of technology, lighted buttons and vector screens and analog knobs. But unlike previous entries of science fiction, none of these doodads are sleek or clean or shiny, except the bad guy stuff. No, Star Wars is grimy. It's filthy. It's worn down and scuffed and scratched. We spend a whole scene in a trash bin, wet and stinking and sloshing around piles of junk. And this is the juxtaposition that made Star Wars stick out from everything else that came before it. We have this archetypal, highly imaginative story contrasted with an incredibly gritty, grungy world. Ideals with a realistic setting where people sweat and rely on technology with similar aesthetics to 1970s computers and gadgets. There's nostalgia for the stories the audience grew up on, and the groundedness that a post-Watergate adult world could buy into. And so Star Wars became this thing, this unstoppable, culture-making, culture-breaking thing. And then in 2012, George Lucas, the director and driver of this entire juggernaut of a franchise, sold it to Disney. They got to work right away. First, they wiped the slate clean by throwing out the entirety of the expanded universe and rebranding it as Star Wars Legends. And then they started building out their own sequels and spin-offs and expanded storytelling. One of the first projects pitched to the new producers of the franchise, even before they had started to put together the bones for their next main Star Wars series, was a movie that was eventually called Rogue One. The idea here is, what if instead of this juxtaposition between mythic storytelling and a gritty, grounded world, you just had a grounded story inside of a grounded world? And it would be new, because the contrast had become the norm. It had lost its novelty. Divorced from its main characters, the plot of Star Wars is about the bad guys looking for stolen plans to a superweapon. Rogue One asks, okay, how did the plans get stolen in the first place? Who pulled off that heist? And the answer is not the shiny heroes who stepped out of a storybook. That work would be done by people with blood and dirt on their hands. Pragmatists, not spiritual figures dabbling in the metaphysical. It would be Han Solo all the way down, spies and criminals and assassins doing the hard, dirty work that let Luke Skywalker shoot a proton torpedo and save the day. This isn't Mrs. Miniver telling a story about the home front fathers who rowed out in their boats to rescue the trapped soldiers at Dunkirk. This is the Dirty Dozen, about murderers becoming soldiers. And its last act is incredibly successful at that. The climactic Battle of Scarif is phenomenal, pulling off a level of suspense and investment that's remarkable, especially since this is a direct prequel to A New Hope. We know they're going to be successful. We know the plans are going to be found and relayed, and we suspect that will be the only thing getting off this planet. And what we suspect is revealed to be true. Not one member of Rogue One, of our intrepid heroes, makes it out alive. That's a spoiler, and yet it's not a spoiler. It's the nature of that story. In Return of the Jedi, a woman called Mon Mothma, a single-scene rebel leader that reappears in Rogue One, delivers an intelligence briefing where she utters the sentence, "Many Bothans died to bring us this information." While Rogue One is about a separate mission, the fact that Mon Mothma makes only her second Star Wars film appearance, deleted scenes in Revenge of the Sith don't count, telegraphs that this whole crew is going to die. Watching this film in the theater as each one of them gave their lives in desperate acts to make the mission succeed, I found myself weeping. I also found myself wishing that any of the first 2/3 of this film had actually helped me get to know any of these characters. I learned more in their dying seconds than in the previous 90 minutes. Rogue One has an exposition problem. Predominantly, it has a show don't tell problem, as in, it spends a lot of time telling us about who each of these people are and does a very bad job of showing us. There's a pilot who theoretically defects because of the mentoring he received from an Imperial officer double agent. We know this is why he changed sides, because it is told to us in an intelligence briefing. We also know he's a pilot because he says that to himself over and over again. We never see an interaction between him and the officer. We never see him do much of anything except be tortured and fly a ship. There's our protagonist, Jyn Erso, whose criminal resume is also read out to us in an intelligence briefing. We're told she's cynical, hardened. In an infamous deleted line used in the trailer, she says, "This is a rebellion, isn't it? I rebel." And yet all of her actions are idealistic, softened by the very presence of actress Felicity Jones. Messiest of all is Cassian Andor, the most senior of the supporting players. He is introduced to us literally killing a man in cold blood, an informant who had just delivered him crucial intelligence. Plot-wise, he's also supposed to be a threat to Jyn once she stops being a valuable asset. And yet, he's constantly giving hopeful, idealistic speeches. As for the roots of this character, instead of being shown the origins of the disconnect between his actions and his speech, we're given a single line of backstory. "I've been in this fight since I was 5 years old." An utterly baffling statement considering that the Empire is only 19 years old, and Diego Luna, baby-faced as he is, does not look 24 at 33. Luna is, in fact, the most interesting thing about this character. On the page, he's a Han Solo clone, but give him a Mexican accent and an adorably charming demeanor, and he becomes something else. And yet, when Disney announced that Cassian Andor would get his own eponymous prequel show about the character's origins, the fandom collectively groaned. Did we really need to see what happened to Diego Luna at 5? And did we really need to see it spread out over multiple episodes? Since Disney acquired Star Wars, the story became burdened with canon and continuity. Instead of the old model of the expanded universe, both continuing the story of the original characters and adding new ones that redefined what Star Wars could be, Disney Star Wars was a cinematic universe, a la Marvel in space, stories as both chores and advertisements for the next thing. And so we couldn't imagine any version of this show that wasn't streaming content slop. Andor is not that. Andor is something different. Andor is, in fact, hardly even about Cassian himself. Rather, it is a show about the ripple effect of Cassian's existence and his choices. Perhaps you've heard of the butterfly effect, that the flapping of a butterfly's wings can cause a tornado. This is a show that miraculously manages to convey that. In the first scene of the first episode, Cassian is somewhere he should not and cannot help to be, and makes a terrible, necessary choice. This choice sparks an investigation, which puts him on the run, which puts him in the path of the rebellion, and deeply affects his community. Their actions impact others throughout the galaxy, a slow-building great chain of action and consequence. In this chain, there are no weak links. Each life touched, each choice made matters. We don't get to see any complete stories. Like in Rogue One, we get to know some characters just before their deaths. Others we see on just the start of their journeys. Still others at the terrifying middle, their final chapters often left hanging in the air. There's a line said twice in Rogue One, passed from Cassian to Jyn. Rebellions are built on hope. In that film, it starts as part of the muddying character motivations, repeating as part of the rallying speech that leads into the phenomenally constructed final act. In this show, we find it was passed to Cassian by an ordinary young man, a bellhop at a once prestigious hotel, trying to keep the faith in the midst of horrifying circumstances. He's a nobody, not even given a name, and yet he is essential, passing on an earnest axiom that, unknown to him, will inspire a courageous, suicidal mission that will lead to the destruction of the Death Star and the beginning of the end of the Empire itself. A few weeks ago, we in the United States observed the 4th of July, our Independence Day, marking our own rebellion from a tyrannical empire. We have many heroes whose names we remember, whose acts we celebrate. But much of our mythology is actually nameless. We don't know who fired the first shot of the American Revolution at the Battle of Lexington and Concord. We don't even know which side. The British said it was the American militia. The militia said it was the British. Townspeople, eyewitnesses, gave mixed reports as well. Some historians wonder if there weren't simultaneous shots. Whoever it was, his name and his motives have been completely lost to time. Conflict there wasn't inevitable. If there wasn't a shot, there may not have been a battle. There may not have been an actual war. The Boston Tea Party is also an event we know surprisingly little about. It was largely carried out by the Sons of Liberty, but we have no idea who they were. Samuel Adams is a known figure who may have been involved, but that's actually debated. We don't know who was there. We can guess why many wore Mohawk costumes, but we don't actually know why. Not for certain, anyway. We don't know who designed our flag, the iconic stars and stripes. According to legend, it was Betsy Ross, but that narrative is highly contested. There were quite a few flag makers in the area at that time in that place, and we honestly have no idea which woman developed the final design. There's no paper trail. Just a story told by Betsy Ross's grandson when he was an adult with something to gain by it, with details that don't add up. So this woman, whose work heavily influenced this major national symbol, does not have her work recorded at all. In the grand scheme of things, this is pretty recent history in a place with pretty good records and accounts, built on Enlightenment values of observable science and philosophy. And yet, so much is unknown. This is to say nothing of the regular old people living their lives in the midst of a war, making 1,000 tiny choices, all influencing each other without any record. With very few exceptions, we humans cannot know the full extent of our impact on the world. We literally cannot see what is happening. We have absolutely zero perspective on the full consequence of our choices, on the great chain of action in which we are a part. It can be really easy to dismiss our existence as unnecessary, as small. but we honestly have no idea. In Andor, there are 2 alien fishermen checking their nets who give a ride to 2 strangers. They're just being kind. They have no idea what brought these men to them, and they have no idea what they will do. Someday, when they hear of the Death Star's destruction, they will still have no idea of the part they've played in such acts. They just helped 2 men in a desperate situation. This whole show is an exercise in dramatic irony. We know that every action of these characters, however insignificant, is the foundation to epic mythology. There are grand heroes saving the day because many Bothans died to bring us this information. But the thing I cannot stop thinking about, the reason I cannot stop talking about this prequel show to a prequel spinoff of a 50-year-old film, is that we literally cannot have the perspective of dramatic irony in real life. We cannot know. And yet, we do. When my oldest child was a baby, we lived within walking distance to a Starbucks. She was so small, couldn't say anything, couldn't even walk yet. But she had the most beautiful smile. And I watched people come in to get their coffee, haggard, beleaguered. I don't know who any of them were, where they came from, what was happening in their lives. But my baby would smile at them, and I would watch their whole day change as they smiled back. By just being there, my baby touched so many lives. And she was there because I desperately needed to get out of the house. A single choice with tiny consequences. Part of a great chain of action. I don't know what that action led to, but it led to something. Every person is connected. Every person is necessary. Each one of us is affecting the other, tiny ripples spilling out into vast waves. Each one of us matters, not just the Luke Skywalkers or the Princess Leias, but the fishermen and the bellhops and the child who can do nothing but smile. And I hope that you remember that today. Thanks for coming.